I never played the original Final Fantasy VII, mostly because turn-based games never really worked for me, with a couple exceptions. Main reason being, I've never found turn-based games engaging. Generally, it's either you go, I go, you go, I go. It's just back and forth. You can, take a nap, make a sandwich in between moves, and it's like, okay, this is kind of boring. And you gotta rely on everything in between all of that to make up for it. And, sometimes it doesn't. And then otherwise, you'll have to deal with, I don't know if it's what it's called for everything else, but in Final Fantasy, it's the ATB gauge. Basically, it's just a bar that builds up slowly over time, and then once it's full, you can use your moves. And if you don't use your moves, the enemy has multiple chances to attack. And then, it's not engaging, but it's also stressful, as far as I see it. Which is great for something like Paper Mario, which I find engaging and not stressful. Sure, it's kind of like a your turn, my turn type of style, but when you actually do each move, you have to do action commands. Which basically, if you want to get the full extent out of each move, you have to press buttons, you have to move the stick, you have to do something. It's not just press the button, do the thing. It's press the button, and then make sure to press this other button while doing the thing in order to do the thing better. If you don't use the action commands in Paper Mario, you're going to be in trouble. And then Thousand Year Door adds even more engagement by having stylish moves. I mean, it's like the one turn-based game where I will make an exception and say, yeah, this is one of my favorite games, despite that I generally don't like turn-based games. And this kind of aversion to turn-based games has always been why I've avoided Final Fantasy games. I don't find them engaging, or they're stressful, or both, and I just couldn't ever see myself getting into them. But I always really wanted to, because I have a friend who keeps telling me all about this Final Fantasy stuff, and I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. If only I could enjoy that. So, color me surprised when FF7 was going to get a remake. And that's the one everybody knows about. That's the one with Cloud, with Aerith, Tifa, and Barret. Like, these are some of the most iconic characters in any Final Fantasy. I wouldn't say it's the best Final Fantasy game. I've heard, mixed things. I've heard, it's the best Final Fantasy game. Oh no, like 6 is, or 10 or whatever, I don't know. But it is like undeniably the most iconic FF7 game because it's the one that everybody knows. It was the biggest step as far as like going. I think that was a step where they went from 2D sprite work to full 3D. And it looks like complete garbage now, but back then it was revolutionary. So when I heard it was getting a remake and it looked gorgeous, I was like, I've got to try that. Especially when I heard that it was going to be more of an action-oriented game rather than, turn-based. But I also saw that they were trying to not only appeal to newcomers, but also appeal to old fans. And I, of course, thought, how are they going to do that? And then I also heard that the Kingdom Hearts 2 combat designer was going to be on this project, and I was like, oh, okay, I have faith now. I have faith that it's going to be good. I don't have faith that it's going to appeal to old and new fans. But we'll see. And then the demo came out, and I played it, and oh yeah, that it definitely, I can definitely see it from all ends. Basically, how it goes is you'll have your basic combo, then you'll have a strong combo, and then you have a quick action menu, and then you have the regular command menu, which you can. It's like a scroll through menu, like whatever. This system's absolutely fantastic. And while you can't really Dark Souls it like I was expecting to, it near perfectly blends like some of the elements of the turn-based combat that it used to have with the new action-oriented stuff that they've added in. It's so well blended together. I mean, again, you can't Dark Souls through it. You will get hit. You will have to heal a lot. But there's also like placement strategy and stuff like that. And you have to, know when to attack, know when to block. Enemies still have weaknesses, certain abilities and spells are good to use at certain points. You will be using Phoenix Downs to revive your party members because they will die, and I love it. I'm getting those feelings of, oh, this is what the turn-based combat was kind of like, but also getting the action-oriented stuff that I want and that I crave. It's engaging, it's fun, it works, and then of course you still have the ATB gauge, which is what your menus are for. You have basically 2 bars in most cases. I think at some point, depending on the materia you have, you can get 3 on someone, but generally have 2 ATB bars. Once one fills up, you can use most moves. There's a few that require 2, but you know. And then each character's kind of got their own thing. You know, Cloud's better physical DPS. Barrett's a ranged tank, oddly enough, but you know, you're gonna get shot with guns a lot, so it works somehow. Barrett's your healer, and then Tifa you can kind of do whatever with, I guess. I used her more as a spellcaster, so like offensive spells. I mean, you can kind of build almost however you want, but there are some builds that are somewhat generally better than others. But you know, I had a lot of fun deciding on materia to use, and you know, upgrading each weapon, getting use out of each weapon so that I could get their special moves, even though, you know, I used the Buster Sword through most of the game, which I actually kind of liked because the Buster Sword's iconic and I just like seeing it. Even though, you know, there is, the last weapon you get is, for Cloud at least, is probably the best that you can get for him. Again, though, still kind of depends on how you want to build. But each character like feels distinct and has, you know, different moves, so you can switch between party members, which is great. So you don't just have to control Cloud the whole time, but you can, even if you have one character that you want to play the most, you can still, you know, tell your party members to do different moves once their ATB gauges are filled. And a lot of times it becomes a strategy of, okay, who's the best party member to use in this situation? Oh, this party member's in trouble. Let me switch to this party member, fill up their gauge faster because, you know, whoever you're controlling, your gauge fills up faster. Let me fill up their gauge so that I can heal them or that I can get them out of the situation in some way. And yeah, just overall, the combat's fantastic. I keep hearing there's a lot of additions to the story. Apparently, the entirety of this game takes place between like 5 to 10 hours of the original, which I was wondering how they were going to stretch it out, considering it takes place in such a small amount of original game time. They stretch it out. In some ways, I would say it works really well, and in other ways, I would say, you know, it kind of drags to a halt. They've introduced a new enemy type, which basically are, I would consider, the anti-retcon ghosts. You know, from what I hear, you know, certain things were supposed to happen and then weren't going to, but then had to happen because the anti-retcon ghost showed up. It was interesting, and oddly enough, it was something where I looked at it and I was like, that seems like a very Nomura thing to put in, because it has to do with fate and stuff like that, and I don't know, just something I thought about. You know, besides that, there's a lot of, you know, side quests that weren't in the original. There's a lot of extra segments that weren't in the original, and a lot of these are fantastic. I mean, you've got this whole segment with Tifa where you go around changing water filters or something, and just getting to know people around town, putting your name out there, taking jobs, and then people actually kind of liking you, even though, you know, Cloud's kind of a dick. And then you get this bros night out with Johnny, assuming, you know, you do all his stuff. I mean, you can avoid him and get a different set of quests, but if you get Johnny's quests, Johnny Quest. No, if you get Johnny's quests, you can get, I think I've heard the original quests, but with a slight spin on them. Either way, from the things that I've heard have been added and weren't in the original, I liked them. I liked those additions. There were a couple spots, actually several spots, where they added in like these, you know, you gotta crouch under this, you gotta squeeze through this. That's where I felt like the game kind of grinded to a halt. And then there were some spots where, you know, your movement speed was capped and lowered. And I felt like in some cases it's more cinematic, but it also, you know, again, it grinds the pace to a halt. It doesn't feel like I can keep moving. It's like, okay, gotta sidle through this. And So I would say in a few instances like those, it feels like things just stop. And there's a couple instances where it feels like, oh yeah, they're just padding this. They're not actually adding new stuff, they're just dragging it out. So overall, I feel like that kind of stuff you could maybe cut a couple hours off at most. But with all the side quests that are in this and all the new story bits and all that, I mean, it goes to a full-length game. I mean, there was only one level, I guess, where I felt like it was dragging on for a bit too long. Now, okay, maybe two, but there was one, like, mostly combat-oriented level where I felt like it was dragging on for a bit too long. And I was like, okay, I just want to get through this area. But for the most part, it all worked. And as for the story, I mean, I know a couple of the major story beats that come later that aren't in this game. But as for what is in this game, I'm amazed they could get away with not having so much of what they have in this one. There's a lot of character moments that I feel like this game should have never done without. And overall, the writing and the acting, all of it's really good. The characters are incredible. You know, you really get a feel for each one and how they kind of are. And they're all so endearing. And, you know, Cloud's kind of aloof, and he's trying really hard to act cool. Like, you can tell he's like middle school or high school cool, where he's trying really hard, but, you know, underneath it all, he's kind of a dork. Like, you can see little bits and pieces of that, and I'm interested to see where they go with that. Tifa's a fighter, but at the same time, she's like, oh, I don't know about all this ecoterrorism. It's kind of, ugh. Like, you can tell she's really conflicted. Barrett is very charismatic, very intense, but underneath it all, he's a big softie. He's a dad. He cares about his daughter. So that's all interesting. Aerith, I've seen and heard a lot of different things. I saw and heard a lot of different things before I played the remake. The only exposure I'd really had to her was Kingdom Hearts, in which she is as bland as you can get. But everything I'd heard about her in the actual game was she's sassy, she's, sarcastic, she's not this perfect angel of spirituality and whatnot. And it feels like they kind of merged those two aspects of her. But I would say the purity aspect of her didn't overwhelm the other aspects of her, and she feels like a real character. Like, she seems fun-loving and caring, but at the same time, she knows how to joke and whatnot. Like, there's this part where Cloud's doing something embarrassing. I'm not gonna spoil too much, but he's doing something embarrassing, and she's just like, yeah, woo, I am loving this. And it's one of the greatest moments in the whole game. There's characters in this that I was not expecting to show up this soon, mostly being Sephiroth, who shows up, like, right away. Like, right after the demo era, he shows up as kind of like a hallucination, I think. And he kind of shows up as a hallucination multiple times, and I don't think that's how it was in the original. Again, I haven't played more than what took place in the demo of the original, because the turn-based combat just couldn't do it for me. But, like, Cloud's not doing good. He is mentally not in a good spot. And that I knew going in, but I didn't know how hard they would drive that home. So, and again, with the Fate ghosts, the anti-retcon ghosts, they had such a presence in this one that I'm wondering, is the original story going to change a whole bunch? Or are these Arbiters of Fate going to keep it kind of on the right track, but have a few differences here and there? I'm really curious, because some characters didn't die when they were supposed to, apparently, and some stuff happened too late, like later than it should have. I really don't know. I mean, I want that spirit of the original. Apparently, a lot of fans are excited. A lot of, like, old school fans are excited for what's happened. A lot of them aren't. So, I mean, I want that spirit of the original, but, if they're going to make it in parts like this, they have to take it in kind of a new direction. They got to add a bunch. I'm satisfied with what we got so far. In fact, I'm more than satisfied. I'm ecstatic. I'm excited for what comes next. But, I will also be kind of upset if they change too much. So far it's been, good, it's been tasteful, it's added, stuff that I've enjoyed, but I guess we'll see. And, to top it all off, of course, the game looks gorgeous. You take a look at the original art and it's like, oh man, that's just a collection of shapes. That's not even a person. They've got square hands and yikes. But I mean, you look at it now and it's like, wow, this is gorgeous. This is fantastic. I love this. Oh, and I almost forgot one more thing. If you're gonna play it and you haven't played it yet, talk to Chadley, put the assess materia on, keep it on there, and use it every time you encounter a new enemy. It's worth it. You'll get good stuff for it. I promise. Okay, that was Final Fantasy VII Remake. I liked it. I am excited to see where it goes moving forward. I hope it's not too long before, the next few games come out. I am really excited for, some of those major story beats that I know about. I'm excited for the new characters that I haven't really seen much of. One of them that you've gotten a glimpse, but, I want to see all that other stuff. Thank you for watching. Press all the buttons and have a great day.